I learned trying to write an uplifting poem about joy. 1, the internet has pictures of miniature pigs in rain boots. When you are sad, you can Google them. Their existence will make you feel like you can do anything. Pig in rain boots!
Eventually, the pig in rain boots will wear off.
This is when you should Google tiger depression. Tiger depression is real.
In 2011, a tiger lost her cubs in labor and became severely depressed.
The zoo dressed 10 piglets up in tiger print, and instead of eating them,
the tiger loved them! Fake tiger cubs cure tiger depression. Fact!
I wish I was a depressed tiger because, well, I'd still be depressed, but
I would be a mother-fluffing tiger. And if I was crazily misconstruing something my boyfriend said to me, I wouldn't have to deal with my feelings. I could just eat my boyfriend and then eat my feelings. 2, writing a redemptive poem is a lot harder if you don't want to say what it is you need redeeming from.
which is a long way of saying
Fear will jack you up like a cold tequila shot on a hot night. Fear is a dark horse, and she will pull you straight to the bottom of the river.
3, the easiest way to avoid writing your uplifting poem is to ride fear, to convince yourself all your greatest poems come from sadness. But fear is not your broodmare.
Fear will take you to the poem, but it will be the wrong poem, and she will leave you.
Neck deep in pages of unfinished loneliness
And wait for you to self-destruct.
just so you can feel like a poet again.
4, sometimes research
Looks a lot like Facebook.
5, my lover sits on the floor and lets me have the bed so I can write this poem.
Redemption is happening by accident. 6, the mistake was not taking the roller coaster that went upside down first. A funny poem is a roller coaster that goes upside down first.
7, if I squint my eyes, I'm not standing still, writing the worst meditations on joy.
No! I am on a really slow roller coaster. 8, you are not your medicine cabinet.
You are not your pages of unfinished joy that feel like a failure of light.
You are the writer of a million incomplete miracles, God of thousands of right things, and that is enough. It is a wild pony, keeping you in your seat for every roller coaster flip, your own centrifugal force, your blasted, dreaded, jacked up hope.
So our burning question for you as poets, as performers, is did you feel something? Did the poem make you feel something? Were you moved? Oh, hallelujah. Okay, so that accomplished, that is the point of the performance, of course. One of the main ones. We are the Seattle Poetry Slam 2012 team. This is Rose McAleese, Roma Ray, I'm Amber Flame, and the author of the poem, Sara Brickman.
When I was a kid, my mother made latkes every year from scratch. Latkes are potato pancakes fried in about 1/4 inch of oil. My mom learned to make them by watching my Jewish grandmother and by drawing on recipes from other friends. The story goes, she wrote the recipe down on an index card and added to the index card every time she learned a trick of her own. In this way, it became a new recipe. Writing is a solitary act. Whether you're doing it in a room full of other people or alone in your bedroom, creating art is a conversation between head, heart, and body. Right now, I'm performing, and you are listening, or rather, witnessing. Witnessing is an active element in the creation of art. When multiple voices are performing the same poem, it becomes larger. And I don't just mean in terms of actual sound, I mean that when I'm not the only person saying my words, the poem becomes its own being. Because each of these poets have their own voice and their own stories to tell, inviting them to perform my poem changes its story and makes it more universal. The different inflections we bring to the same words change the poem's meaning. Each of your reactions, whether small or explosive, change the way we perform. And this is true of any project or creation that gets shared. Collaboration may be visible or invisible, but it's still there, and it can take all kinds of forms. a musician covering another musician's song, people interacting with a newly released app, or when you try to create your family recipe from the index card your mom wrote for you. Collaboration is based on trust, and often it isn't easy. It frequently means compromising your original vision for something completely new and unexplored. Adhering too closely to a recipe can rob a dinner of its heart. The best meals are made by adding on spice after spice till you can't remember where each flavor came from, that taste that we then try in vain to recreate. To collaborate is to throw ourselves into uncertainty, knowing that on the other side, ingredients added by Rose, Roma, Amber, and me will shine through, but our work will be altered by marinating in the creativity of others. Take the poem you just saw as an example. When our voices land with each other in unison, then we've not only created that one experience where I'm sharing a poem and you are witnessing, but we're also actively engaged with each other. And each of us is both performer and witness. And in an ideal creative setting, that's happening all the time. We're all constantly creating and taking in. And this is a real challenge to the way many of us approach our own creations because it forces us to reinvent our own recipes. It also creates a new version of the idea, the poem, that's not quite what we started with, but has all of the power of multiple voices and multiple performances packed into it. To find the ideal recipe, sometimes we have to reach outside ourselves. Incidentally, this reaching often helps us find the very thing we needed most, support in the form of other creative people to combat that voice in our heads that tells us we're faking it. Collaboration brings the power of your voice to the front, but this time you've got backup. You've got index cards.
I'm a faker, a big fat faker.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Phony.
Fraud.
Faker.
I am an imposter. I
imposter.
barely know what I'm doing most of the time, and the rest of the time,
I'm making things up as I go along.
It is not uncommon for me to be reading the text selection for the first time with my first period students.
Feeling like a jackass.
For assuming the lesson I pulled off the internet that morning would actualize into something decent.
Now, to be fair,
I have moments where I'm prepared and ready to conquer my sophomoric demons with inspired
Standard guided.
instruction, but these are just moments.
Flukes.
Like slipping through the wormhole in the time-space
Right.
continuum.
A chance to see an alternate reality of what I could be if I wasn't such a goddamn faker.
Have you ever had
Have
one
you
of
ever
those
had one of
days?
I've ever had one of those days.
Where you're standing in front of a room full of teenagers and they're staring at you, waiting for you to teach them something.
Only to stumble and fall headfirst into the chasm of...
Oh, snap! I forgot to copy the answer key.
As soon as the first clarifying question has been asked about the handout you just handed out, which is still hot from the Xerox machine.
Have you ever just stood there answering?
That's an interesting question. What do you think about that?
Every time a student asks you something because you yourself just barely understand what it is you're trying to get them to understand.
Wait, what?
I didn't set out to become a teacher.
I never dreamed it would be me up there in front of the class.
I hated school. It was hard for me. I was the fat kid with bad hair. I never really fit in. Oh, I'm still a freak. Only now, they've asked me to join all the multicultural committees and anti-defamation leagues, saying, don't you want to make the school a better, safer place for all our students? And I'm like, no! Just trying to make the school a safer place for me.
I'm constantly going off of tangents and forgetting, oh, wait, I'm supposed to be in charge.
I end up chatting with the students about really interesting but completely random topics.
They ask me questions I can't answer, and the ones I want to try to answer,
I'm
not allowed.
So as soon as a student says to me,
Miss E, I've been thinking.
I know that I am doomed.
Doomed.
Because I'm a faker.
A big, fat faker.
A liar, liar, pants on fire,
Phony, fraud, faker.
So being on this team, we had a lot of opportunities to work on group pieces. A group piece is a poem, usually written by one person. For instance, myself, Rose, and Amber Flame took a part of a poem that was arranged and written by Roma Ray. The act of it is to make it a collaborative thing, and it becomes a group piece. During this process, Roma Ray had this little piece of golden knowledge that I hold really true to me, which is...
That as soon as your internal critic starts to call you a faker, you're really about to crest into greatness.
Which is something, it's less than 140 characters if you want to tweet it too, at Roma Wright. It's something that I hold truth to me, but also I know that some people can think, well, I don't think my voice is important, or I don't think people really want to hear what I have to say. Well, you're wrong, because we each carry a story in us, and there's only one person who can tell your story, and that's you. And I hear this idea that change needs to happen. Change is not happening. When's change going to show up? Well, we think the missing ingredient is you. So you go out there after this TED Talk, and I don't want you to sit there. We don't want you to sit there and just ponder about the ideas. Go out and do something. Go be heard. Because after you become a march of one, you start connecting and talking to others, and the next thing you know, you're a march of millions. And as the great poet and philosopher Dr. Seuss would have said, either or, you've got to make noises in greater amounts.
So open your mouth, lad,
For every voice counts. Thus he spoke as he climbed. When he got to the top,
The lad cleared his throat and he shouted out,
yop! And that one yop, that one small extra yop, put it over. Finally, at last, from that speck on that clover, their voices were heard. They rang out clear and clear. And the elephant smiled. Do you see what I mean? They've proved they are persons, no matter how small, and their whole world was saved by the smallest of all.